things are also going well for Eintracht Frankfurt. 6 points behind Bayern Munich, third place in the Bundesliga. 1 point behind Leipzig, would drop points yet again against Gladbach. Those are 90 minutes I want back, which is why we're not talking about it. Frankfurt, I mean, this Marmoush guy is just absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, this wasn't a Bundesliga match day with many, many good games. Augsburg, Hoffenheim 0-0, Leipzig, Gladbach 0-0. I also watched Union against Freiburg. That was also a 0-0 draw. There wasn't many fireworks on this match day. Stuttgart against Frankfurt more than made up for it. I mean, what a game. In the most dramatic VAR fashion, should have maybe been a 3-3 draw. Stuttgart being robbed by the VAR to take away that late equalizer. And that late equalizer, though, is something that we need to talk about. It didn't hurt Eintracht Frankfurt. And yes, Omar Marmoush was once again outstanding. That free kick, what was it, 120 kilometers an hour that it crossed the line? We sort of wondered about Alexander Nübel if he could have done a little bit better. That ball comes so fast. I don't know if you even see it. But I think as much hype as there is about Marmoush and how great he is, and I've written about him. I think you're doing a newsletter on Eintracht Frankfurt as well, right? We have to caution a little bit here, I think, because I think the one thing that we're all wondering, is this sustainable? How much longer can Omar Marmoush bang them home? That free kick midweek against Slavia Praha, for example, that he scored to give them a 1-0 win. If you have not seen that yet, it's an unbelievable free kick. He just puts it over the wall and dinks it right on the underside of the crossbar into the goal. Someone in our Substack subscriber chat said it's Messi-esque, and it is. This is the kind of free kick that Messi scores, and then he scores a completely different free kick that is just as unbelievable this weekend, right? So the tool set is just incredible that he has at the moment, and then of course you throw in Hugo Ekitike and all that kind of stuff. But I think the question that we have before we get overly excited about Eintracht Frankfurt being the Bayern Munich hunters this year, I guess we have to really wait and see if it's sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, look, this game was incredible. I actually compared in my newsletter to the Fast and Furious movie franchise, because it was like every kind of, how like in those movies, they go from being about a drag race to then about a bank heist to then about global assassins, and the next one will probably be on the bloody moon or something. Everything, the next thing has to always be bigger and better than the last one, and it felt like that was this game. Like, we had the opening moment of 20 minutes in, and Demirovic missed a penalty, and then Hugo Ekitike scores an incredible glancing header. Brown then scores a goal out of nowhere, seemingly, lovely kind of dribble from Knauf. Marmoush then does even better than that with the incredible free kick, and then Wagnerman scores, which I genuinely thought was maybe the goal of the game, actually, with a really incredible left-footed volley out of nowhere from a fullback, so maybe it wasn't better than Marmoush's, but I thought it was incredible. And then, of course, as you said, the game finishes on this remarkable kind of cliffhanger of an offside goal for Fury.
Chabot actually got an offside goal as well in the first half.
You're absolutely right, Spawn. So, it was a game that was just kind of going from breath to breath. I thought it was a fantastic match, great entertainment. But as you said, it was weird, actually, because it was a game in which I kind of walked away from it thinking, I actually thought that game better reflected how good Stuttgart were rather than how good Frankfurt were, because, obviously Stuttgart lost a game, but they lost a game in a manner in which they obviously didn't have their star striker up front in Dennis Undav, which he was sorely missing when it came to that penalty, which Demirovic scored. Didn't score. Not to mention the fact that they're still working with a very young backline. But they came from 2 goals down or 3 goals down, and not only probably should have equalised and taken a point from this game, but if you then consider the fact that they missed a penalty, you could probably argue that they maybe should have actually won this game, which is crazy considering the fact that Frankfurt scored 3 perfectly legitimate goals. So I then kind of made me think, and I have kind of done my newsletter on this week, looking at the issues that Frankfurt have and how they do have this incredible goal-scoring run right now, but they also have this capacity to just completely ship goals. And I wasn't alone in it. Kevin Trapp talked about it after the game. I watched his interview with DAZN at full time, or DAZN, or whatever you want to call it. And he basically said, he was furious. He was absolutely livid with the way that Frankfurt finished that game. And I can completely understand why, because if you actually look at how many chances Frankfurt have given away this season, it is incredible. Their XG against, and for anyone who doesn't really follow these kind of stats, XG is just basically how many chances they've conceded. There's only 4 teams in the Bundesliga who've conceded more, and basically those 4 clubs are fighting relegation. And then there's Frankfurt, who we're currently talking about as, a team pushing for the top 4, a team who've gone toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich and drawn 3-3. A team who've really captured the interest and the excitement of so many Bundesliga fans this season because of Omar Marmoush and Hugo Ekitike and a bunch of other players as well. But it does kind of feel like it is almost kind of built on shaky grounds in the sense that you can't outscore a bad defense. It's like that thing they say about fitness. You can't outwork a bad diet, or you can't outrun a bad diet. That's the expression I was looking for. I feel like that kind of does kind of reflect football, where you can't outscore a bad defense. And this defense, I think, is continuously proving to be, lackluster. I think Koch in the middle at the back, Robin Koch's very average central defender. I don't think Tuta's tremendously better. They're both fullbacks. They kind of mix and match from week to week. I don't think they're outstanding. And I think Kevin Trapp is between the goals every week, basically pulling off master saves or pulling off wonder saves. He obviously made the right call for the penalty to save that, even though it wasn't a particularly great one from Demirovic. But I think he's having to basically pull off miracles every week just to kind of compensate for a pretty lackluster defence. And, I'm not trying to rain on Frankfurt's parade here by any means, because I think Dino Topmuller is a very good head coach, and I think when they stop scoring goals, which I think they probably will stop scoring goals eventually, because their XG is far lower than the goals they have scored, so suggests they will come down to earth at some point, particularly Marmoush. I think Dino Topmuller has proven at Frankfurt alone that he's very capable of swapping the team's style, the way they play football, the tactics. When he first came in, they were very defensive. Now they're very attacking, so he's not one of these head coaches who's married to a certain dogma or, ethos about football. And he's like, we're going to play this way no matter what, even if it means we don't win games. He's more than happy to change things up to get results. So I think Frankfurt will still be there or thereabouts. But I think, like I said, I think this result and this performance kind of actually underlined what Frankfurt are very good at right now, but also what they're very bad at. And I'm sure Topmuller knows this, and I'm sure the team his team know this, his coaching team, and they'll have a lot to work on in the international break. And it feels very weird to talk about this game in that context, because they went to Stuttgart and picked up all 3 points. And I'm sure there'll be Frankfurt fans listening to this podcast thinking, "What the hell is he talking about?"
I think a lot of fans sometimes think that about us because they don't want to see the reality. But, this game is a perfect example of it. The XG in this game was 3.52 to 1.66 in Stuttgart's favor.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuttgart had 59% possession and strung together 561 passes versus 376 passes. Stuttgart led every single category in this match except for the player with the most kilometers run when it goes through the Bundesliga app right now. And that's why maybe that's a 3-3 draw in the end would have been justified. And it's also, this pickle that Stuttgart are in the moment is that they times play really good football and they just don't award themselves with results. This is a great game. A great example for that, because, the chapeau offside, the missed penalty, the offside at the very end. This is essentially 3 goals that they should have scored or chalked off, right? And then we're talking here about a very different result. We're talking about a 5-3 win for Stuttgart. And, to be honest with you, if that game had ended 5-3 for Stuttgart, I don't think anyone would have complained. Everyone would have said, this is what the underlying stats point out. And that is a little bit of an issue that Stuttgart have at the moment. And I think some of it, people have asked about it. I think some of it is that the way Hoeneß plays it has to be very precise to work. Right? And that precision at the moment is just missing because they're playing so many games. It's just game after game after game after game after game, and not just for club, but it's also for country. And I think, the best thing that could have happened to Stuttgart this week is that Leveling and Under are out with injuries, because that just gives them a nice 10 days for 2 of their most important players to just heal and rest up. like Germany can do without these Stuttgart guys for 10 days. You know, Germany's next two opponents are Bosnia and Hungary, and they essentially need, a draw or a win to win the group. Like, we could send U21 and probably get one out of the 3 points necessary for that. So there is really no reason for Stuttgart to sacrifice themselves for the nation in these upcoming Nation League games, right? So they're desperate to just heal and rest. And I think, they were so smart lowering the expectations ahead of the season, knowing full well that this could happen. I'm saying, look, we want to finish top half on the table. This is going to be an extremely difficult year for us. And I think maybe deep down they knew. I think that is, people ask me, what's wrong with Stuttgart? I think there's nothing wrong with them. I think they're still an excellent club. They have very talented players. It's just too many games. And we see this with countless other Bundesliga teams throughout the ages. Before Stuttgart, it was Union Berlin. Before Union Berlin, it was Freiburg, right? Like, this happens every single year. The trick is to really use a season like this that is difficult to just stay in the league, finish in the top half, take some extra money, and then, use that to sort of consolidate yourself. This is what Union Berlin have done really well. They're excellent this year, right? It's what Freiburg have done through the ages. They've been in the league for the better part of a decade now. That is how you grow and rebuild and make Stuttgart a brand. Actually, the other club that is a great example of that is Frankfurt, right? And who slowly but surely have been building up the club. So, yeah, I think Stuttgart will be ultimately fine. And this is a great example of where I think they still play really good football.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. The coaching, the high quality of coaching is beyond question in this team, because it's a credit to Sebastian Hoeneß that people have almost forgotten how much transition and how much turnover this squad has had to face this season. I wrote my newsletter on it last week actually, about Angelo Stiller and how he and Karazor, more or less the only, well, not the only, because you got guys like Mittelstadt and Fulrick and stuff who are obviously in and out of the team as well. And Alexander Nobel was obviously there last year, but that midfield duo are more or less the only kind of constants in that team right now. Obviously, Fulrick's in and out of the team, but he's not a starter every week. Milo, more or less, is a starter, I guess. Mittelstadt has good and bad seasons, campaigns, performances, and Alexander Nobel's a player who's on loan and is obviously also maybe somewhat inconsistent this season. But the point what I was making was that behind those two players, you've got 2 or 3 young central defenders who are learning their trade, and Sebastian Hoeneß is trying to obviously develop into top players. In front of them, they've got a whole host of forward players who are also learning the trade. The fact that Demirovic is almost seen as this kind of safe pair of hands up front, even though he was only signed in the summer, I think is remarkable, because you compare him to someone like Toure, and there's a huge amount of, potential in all these players, but they're also very new players for Stuttgart. Even Voltemade, who came on, I think he signed from Werder Bremen last season in the summer. An exciting young player, did really well to set up the goal for Stuttgart. And, that's another player who, as you mentioned a few weeks ago, we talked about this, all these young players are learning their trade, but they all know exactly what to do when they come on in these games. It's not like, for example, Dortmund, where it looks like, as you call them, B vibes B, because, doesn't seem like there's any system or any tactics in that team from week to week. And it's like 11 players who just do what they want. And Emre Can certainly did what he wanted at the weekend there, and it cost their team. But with Stuttgart, it's a team of system, it's a team of rules, and all these young players come in and out of it, and they know what they're doing when they do come into it. And that, again, was an example of how well I thought they actually played against Frankfurt. And this isn't the first time we've seen this. It was the exact same against Real Madrid, where Real Madrid ended up beating them in the Champions League at the Bernabeu. But I actually thought Stuttgart were the better team. And I'm sure Sebastian Hoeneß is taking in these performances, and he'll be upset that they're not winning these games. But I think he'll probably take a lot of confidence from the fact that his teams are playing the way they're supposed to play. It's just a simple fact that Omar Marmoush scores from 40 yards out, or Vinicius Jr. scores an incredible goal because he's a world-class player. And he's probably looking at that team and thinking, give it 6 months, and the likes of Chabot, Raoult, Demirovic, these guys will all eventually become far more dependable. They'll become far more useful players for Stuttgart, and we'll be back to where we were before. But I think if you had given a head coach even half as good as Sebastian Hoeneß, the circumstances he's had to deal with, I think Stuttgart would be bottom half. You say they'd be maybe not quite fighting relegation, but then again, maybe, because this is what Stuttgart do. We've seen them be a yo-yo club because they have a decent squad for the young players. They sell them all. The head coach can't make it work, and then they get relegated and whatever else. So I think it's immense credit to Sebastian Hoeneß that this young team are still fighting these, the best teams in Germany and Europe, and usually looking like the best team on the pitch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this was a fantastic game. I think really, really good advertising for the Bundesliga overall.